So this is it's a quick video for the Woolery Spin Along. It's the first year we're doing it, so it's very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I am Dani.
I'm Annie.
She's going to be your host for the Spin Along, so you'll be hearing a lot from her. But we're going to talk about right now just some tips, tricks, things like that, stuff to consider and that sort of thing while you're spinning. Not necessarily just for this application. These are actually useful things that both of us have found in our spinning careers, all on our own. And things that are just generally kind of good practice sort of things for something that is way more physical than you give it credit for. So I'll let Annie start out with the things that she was thinking about, and then we'll just kind of bounce off of each other and add to as we like. And of course, always, if you guys have any questions about anything that we say, let us know, and we'll be happy to elaborate. But.
Yeah. Well, we've gotten a lot of feedback, on the Facebook page about people wanting tips and tricks and those type of things. And, even though we're not doing instructional stuff, there are things that we've learned throughout our spinning and what I've learned trying to do the consistent spinning, like for the spin along. One of the biggest helpful things, when it comes in your kit, and if you don't have one and you didn't get a kit, you might want to think about purchasing a precision spinning card. It helps you with your gauge, and it helps you as you're spinning, so you don't have to pull out a bunch of the yarn that you've spun to do a wraps per inch. You can actually lay it right over, and it tells you roughly what your wraps per inch is. A good idea, and Dani had this earlier, is like if you're listening to music while you're spinning, or if you want to set a timer every 5 minutes, or maybe less, or maybe more, depending how confident you are, you stop and do a little test and make sure that you're at the same gauge you were when you first started, that when you were 5-10 minutes ago, so this card's really helpful, and this is what helped me the most throughout this whole doing the samples and things for the spin along. So there's that. And
with that, especially, specifically when she was talking about like making sure that you take breaks to check, not only when you check to make sure that everything is, you're still spinning the right weight, but also it's a really good time to make sure that your back is nice and straight. And you can see me while she's talking, I'm starting to slump over, which is bad. So, for the music people that are doing this, I'm a music person, and, edge of your chair if you can help it, back straight. And if you can't help it, I totally understand. Just make sure that you're not slouching. Make sure that you're not sitting all wild and wacky, which is really easy to do when you're doing something repetitive over and over again, because you just kind of get relaxed, and then you start sitting in ways that you probably shouldn't be sitting.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of good stretches. You can look online for your hands too, because as you're, this action over time, any action over time can cause a problem with your joints and things. So, stretching and then back and forth. I mean, there's great stretching videos and information on the internet.
You should probably stretch both before and after, because this, like she said, this motion, that pinching motion when you're holding your fiber is really tough on these tendons here, but also this pinching motion over and over again, and this very short back and forth on your elbow or your wrists is also really, really hard on your joints. So just make sure that you're stretching, and if you're in pain, stop. I am really bad about that. If you're in pain, just stop, take a break, maybe stop for the day.
I know we're not running marathons, but I mean, we don't want to hurt ourselves either.
No.
Something else we had talked about, I guess, is also your tension on your wheel. Depending on what kind of wheel you have, if you have a Scotch tension, you have your brake band, which goes around your bobbin. If you're doing Irish tension or bobbin lead, flyer lead. We just talked about this. So anyway,
it's hard to keep track.
So as your bobbin when your bobbin's light, you don't need to have a lot of tension on it. As your bobbin fills up, you do need to crank your knob a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. I found as I was doing the samples that I really had my tension up way higher than it needed to be when I was just spinning to spin, without having any kind of thought while I was spinning. I was just consistently getting a DK weight, fingering weight, that type, but I wasn't really trying. But as I was trying, I was like, why is this pickup? It's too much. I can't get this fine. I can't get finer threads, especially for the fingering weight single. And I realized I had my tension up way too high. So I started basically with it off completely and started getting to the point where it would finally pick up my yarn from as I'm drafting, and then I would start from there. And as you know, I filled up my bobbin more and the bobbin got heavier, you had to pick your tension up a little bit more too. And that was really helpful for me, getting off started.
And then specifically, the way that I've always been taught is just, and I don't know how well you can see this, if we need to do a close-up we can, but to just start until it starts to stretch. And that's usually enough tension to start. And if you really need it to be a little heavier, you can nudge it up, just like a 1/16 of a turn, just so that it'll start to pick up from you. You don't need it to grip it or rip it from your hands, just enough so that you can feel it, as we all well know. But that's generally good practice. It's also easier on your joints because then you're not holding so tight to keep it in your hands while you're playing with it.
Pre-drafting also was a big thing that helped me for consistency, because you can have this beautiful, top that's in a braid, or, and you could try and spin the whole thing, but you really don't have any control over the fiber in that, unless you're very skilled, and bless you if you can do that. I can't. So for almost all of them, I split.
I put fiber there for you if you want to illustrate your pre-drafting.
Here's some fiber.
I forgot about fiber. For almost all the different weights, I was splitting and pre-drafting. So here, here's a good chunk of fiber. If you just start from here, you're gonna be less consistent, I feel like, just because there's a lot going on. So you can split your fibers. You can even beforehand pre-draft them a little bit, and that gives you a lot more control and consistency. I guess control goes really hand in hand with consistency, because if you're out of control, you're not going to be able to you're out of control. You won't be able to keep it going. And you want to maybe stay as consistent in your style as well as your, in your drafting style, as well as your spinning style as you're spinning. I mean, obviously be adventurous. We were just talking about, maybe if you're not used to long draw, try it more in this, because you're just trying to become better at things you're not as good at.
Right.
So I don't know, being consistent in your drafting and your spinning seems to be a good
Being
plan.
consistent in your action will result in consistent yarn in general.
There you go. She said that way better than me.
So, one thing also to remember, and I think this is a thing that most people are kind of aware of. Well, I'll say this one other thing that I had in my mind while we were talking about roving or top or whatever, is that especially if you have something that is hand-dyed or anything like that, you'll notice, and this is just part and parcel of the process, a lot of the time it'll get just a tiny bit compacted in areas. Sometimes you pick up some stuff that's really compacted. It can be saved, and that's totally fine. It'll take some time to do. But if you're using something that's not the stuff that is part of the spin along kit, and you have something maybe that's hand dyed that's a little sticky and hard to draft, pre-drafting helps with that immensely. That's the way that you save something when you have something that's really badly compacted. Most of the time it's fixable, and at that point it's a matter of whether you have the sanity to deal with it or not. But yeah, so that's something that can also be helped with that. And she was saying, that you have all of this going on here. One thing I wanted to mention too, I struggle with this a lot, especially with hand-dyed things, is you don't have to be super concerned about having all of it pull at the same time. So you don't necessarily have to be going, using the whole of the top, if that makes sense, all at the same time. If you start carting off to one side and you have this that's leaving alone, it's fine. You don't have to be like super crazy about the fact that you're not pulling from everything all at once. If this is all you need to get a fingering weight, deal with that until this is like way short, and then you can jump over to the other side and start spinning from there, and eventually you'll work your way down kind of staggered. And since it's all in one color, it doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah. I find when that starts to happen, my hand hurts more because I'm trying to control it more. So that's why the splitting it was helpful for me, because also it was giving me a slight anxiety when that happens. And I'm like, oh no.
Don't like to have a mess in your hands.
Yeah, so if it's easier to work with a smaller amount, that's what.
And again, if you have it in a solid color, it doesn't matter what you do to it, because it's all going to look the same at the end, because it's all the same color. But another thing, while we're on the subject of colors and things like that, if you have a hand-dyed top or any kind of dyed top that you want to maybe have shorter color runs of, that's the way to do it. You take it and you split it. So just another
And I
tip
wouldn't stress
for-
yourselves out too much by trying to keep your color. You know, we're really trying to focus on consistency in your size of your yarn. If you're trying to figure out color and that, you know, just don't want to stress yourself out anymore than we already are.
The other thing that I was gonna say was that I know that this is a tough subject for a lot of people. I also don't like doing this, but if you find that you're having trouble keeping consistent yarn and your bobbin is really full, consider either winding off and putting that on a storage bobbin so that you have an empty bobbin again, or switching bobbins. I know that we, as a general rule, kind of hate to have breaks in our spinning. It's totally normal, and if you look at old antique wheels, their bobbins are so tiny.
Small.
So you have these, you know, for years and years and years and years, these runs of production spinning even that only had this much at a time. And so you would have to have all of these splits. It's actually very helpful to have constantly changing bobbins and things like that, like even in plying and stuff, but in singles too, to go back to your empty spot often so that you don't have all of this extra weight packed on that you didn't have at the start. Because when you take this off and it's got 4, 6 or 8 ounces or whatever on it, and then you jump to something that has nothing on it, then you're totally unprepared for not having any of that weight on there anymore.
Yeah, and remember to turn your tension back down too.
Yes.
After you do that.
That's something you'll probably notice. It'll go,
Yeah.
but yes.
I think one of the other things, and I don't think I mentioned it, was counting while you're treadling. You know, every treadle, like count to 10 and see how many times you draft in that 10 treadles, and try to maybe stay consistent in that treadling and counting sequence. But that can be hard too. But you know, that I've noticed that helped me a bunch as well.
For you music people, just keep a metronome with your foot. Just pick one that you like, and not just pick one that you like, but do it at a pace that's comfortable for you, and try and at least, if you can't count them, numbers don't work on my brain, so I just kind of get a rhythm going that I'm comfortable with and that is a good speed for my feet, and then spin for just a second, get a couple of yards done, and then check and see what the grist is of that with your little, this guy. And then make sure that that's something that you like. And then if it is, you just kind of keep that same pace, that metronome with your foot, your, consistent rhythm, beats per minute or whatever you need to do. But yeah, if you don't want to necessarily have to count, or if counting is hard for your brain, it's really hard for my brain to count and do something else at the same time. Math and I don't mix. So that might also be helpful to just find a rhythm you like that's comfortable for your feet, and then continuously do that so that you stay consistent. So, yes.
Well, I think that's all I had thought that would be helpful.
All right. So, I guess that's really it as far as tips and tricks and things like that, at least off the top of our heads right now. As always, naturally, if you have any questions or if you need help with something specific, and especially that, if there's something that's really bugging you and you can't figure out what it is, and you don't really know how to overcome that or fix it, if you have a problem with your wheel or anything like that, let us know and we can see what we can do to help you out.
We're monitoring the Facebook page. I mean, I've definitely been seeing some good questions out there, and so anything that you're wondering, I'm sure someone else might be wondering too, so definitely post it on there and we'll
More things that you can ask, the better. Don't look at me.
And hopefully this is helpful.
Yes, so we'll see you soon. Have fun.